to present Dr. Pierre Dorfman, a researcher and doctor.
I would like also, in memory of the four people really involved in this research. Of course, Dr. Jacques Benveniste, and he is not homeopath, but he makes a lot of work to prove that the dilution, high dilution, was effective in pharmacological models. I would like also thank a lot Madeleine Bastide, a big very important personality in the homeopathic field. She was professor in immunology, and she developed concept about signifiers, and it's really important for the future of homeopathy about this. And the last, but not least also, Dr. Yvelan and Roland Comte make a lot of work to interpret all the data in homeopathy, and they wrote a very famous book, Theory of High Dilution. So it's another field, and I think all the person open another paradigm than the mechanism paradigm. Of course, you know that we have the ligand, drug, and the receptor. And in the first part, we think that we need drug to have efficacy. And it's the conventional approach, the fact that if you have no molecules, you have no pharmacological effect, you have no therapeutic benefit, and of course, the homeopathy equals placebo. And this equation is followed by a lot of people in the mechanics paradigm, because if you have no molecules, you have no efficacy, and it's a problem actually presently in France, and we have a lot of detractors for the homeopathy in France against this concept. Of course, the story of the high dilution memory and the memory of the water, at the beginning of the publication by Jacques Benveniste and his team of the paper in Nature about the basophil degranulation triggered by high dilution of antiserum. And we observe the fact that you have a Stokalid curve. So it's very, very strange phenomenon with very, up and down. And this phenomenon was observed in other conditions, not for this immunological model, but on the effect of different poison on the blood vessel dilution, effect on blood vessel in isolated rabbit hair. And what is this curve? This curve is coming from a Russian, Professor Dr. Kravkov, and this observation was made in 1922, and the fact that this is dealing with the transformation of matter into energy. And this phenomenon was already observed very, very early in this. So we initiate the work with Jamal Issa in 1989, and the first step was the confirmation of the effect of highly diluted agonists on various experimental models. So in this research, Jacques Benveniste wanted to test many drugs and many models to confirm this effect of highly diluted agonists. So they use ex vivo model and particularly isolated heart. but also in vitro neutrophil activation, toxicity of heavy metals, fibrinogen coagulation, and also antigen-antibody agglutination. And also some study was conducted in vivo model, for example, cutaneous test. The second step is to find some explanation and exploring the nature of the molecular signal. And the third part is the fact that the message is not molecular, but it's electromagnetic. And so the third and fourth step was the captation of the information of the molecules and to put this electromagnetic signal on a biological system. The first biological system is isolated and perfused heart. So in this model, very well known is you have a really heart of guinea pig or rat maintained stable for several hours. So it's possible to test the different drugs on the same heart, and you have the effect of medication immediately detected in this method. So you know perhaps this famous photo of Jacques Benveniste showing that here you have clear effect of a dilution, the effect of a product with visualization in the flue of the quantity of flue in the tube. Clearly you have an effect. So the parameters is the coronary flow measured every minute during at last 15 minutes, and the results in the percentage of variation. And you have of course, ponderal dose of pharmacological compounds as positive control and water as negative control. And main experiments were conducted in blind. I show you the first results. It's the effect of highly diluted histamine and ovalbumin on coronary flow. And it's clear that you have an effect in comparison with the buffer. And as you can see, you have the dilution is log 3151. It's the log 41 is the mixed pool of dilution from 10 minus 31 to 10 minus 41. So you have no molecules directly in this solution. And we observe that the high dilution have a positive effect and less than the originate molecules administered at ponderal dose -7 molar, and it's a classical dosage used for this model. So you have an effect of histamine and also of albumin. Why? Because you have guinea pig immunized with ovalbumin. So it's possible to show the effect of albumin only in this kind of animal pre-immunized with ovalbumin. The Jacques Benveniste team also studied the effect of homeopathic remedies, and they show that Arnica montana 15CH in granules and also Arnica montana 30CH have a positive effect on this model in comparison with granules as negative control, and also you have a positive effect of Arnica montana in mother tincture. I remember a lot about histaminum 30CH. with Jamal, we made a study during day about histaminum, but it's just a short presentation, and we observe really positive results all the time with histaminum, 13 CH, but also 15 CH, and we conducted many experiments in guinea pig herd with control, and we show that all the time we have a positive effect with this high dilution. So I say this step 2 is exploring the nature of this dilution, and one of the key steps was to show with the CNRS in France, independent team, the effect of the magnetic field 50 Hertz with a relatively good intensity, and on water 12 hours and ethanol. And what we say, it's the action disappear when the solution is magnetized with a treatment with magnetic field. So it's clear that we have the impact of this magnetic field. So the third part is to use a transmitter to register, I can show you after, register the product, and they tested the effect of the heating on this transmitted agonist as previously, and we show that we have a very positive effect of the transmitted histamine and of albumin. It's really very significant. And you have also an effect of endotoxin. And when you have eating, you lost this information. So it's clearly to show that we have an effect of the transmission. The second model is for the transmission is the neutrophil and the forbol myristate acetate, PMA. And when you stimulate the neutrophil, you have the activation of the neutrophil. And you can measure this activation with the reactive oxygen metabolite production. And you can see the apparatus. It's like electromagnetic emission from the original tube. And this experiment was conducted, of course, in blind. Each transmission sequence to neutrophil, you have the input coil coupled with the amplifier, and this part was coupled with the output coil placed in an incubator. And we measure the production of ROM, and at perfect condition, neutrophil was isolated from consenting healthy donors, and for each experience we perform transmission, the percentages of transmission. So the schedule, it's clear that you have transmission here, the tube, and all the experiment was conducted blind. And made a lot of experiment. So the first set of experiment, you have clearly, in comparison with non-stimulated, very clear elevation in this way. And it's the same for the second part. each here. Sometimes you have less than other experiments, but all the time you have a positive effect of the transmitted PMA. So in total, you have, when you make the analysis, you have 37 plus percentage of augmentation in comparison with an exposed cell. And if you do the same with water, the HU, you have 41%. So it's changed. So it's perfectly significant. And the most important thing is the effects of the PMA is roughly equivalent of the conventional dose of PMA. And for pharmacological approach, the impact of PMA is also reduced by a pretreatment with inhibitor. So it's perfectly in line with the classic pharmacological, but we don't use the molecules, original molecules. And the last procedure is to register the signal of the molecule, to amplify the message on the computer, to stock on the computer, and to play the file on the system, biological system. And in this case, you have also acetylcholine and histaminum. So you have the effect of the digitalized acetylcholine and histaminum on this heart. So it's really clearly positive. For acetylcholine and for histamine, and here it's the transdigitalized and the normal, okay? If you put some inhibitors of acetylcholine, atropine, you have no effect with acetylcholine, and it's maintained for histamine. We applied mepiramine, which is an inhibitor of the histamine. You have no effect of histamine, and you have an effect of acetylcholine. So the message of histamine or acetylcholine is exactly the same than the transmitted, digitalized, or the original molecules. And also they made studies with remedies, other remedies, propranolol, a lot of molecules were tested, and we observe a really clear stimulation on this model in comparison with water or control. It's possible also to evaluate the homeopathic remedies. So we have a really clear stimulation of the flu with this remedy. And you know, I put the original granule and the transfer of the granule, and it's quite perhaps more than with transfer and digitalized product. The third biological system used by the team is the antigen-antibody agglutination. So it is in vitro model. So you have a specific antigen coupled in the latex particle, and which is sensibilized with a related antibody, and you follow the agglutination of the preparation. So in this work, the bacterial signal is electronically captured, digitalized, and stored in the computer, and then applied to the system. And it's possible to use E. coli or Streptococcus. It's typically some product of the commercial product. So we use normal product, and we test this condition previously, and they decide to use lower doses of antigen. So we have a really clear effect of the transmitted, because it can be seen on the agglutination degree. And if you apply this pathogen signal, you have a really clear formation of aggregates. So you can see on this slide, so you have the control here, so you have no aggregation, and the aggregation index is low. If you have a detection system, Streptococcus, and you apply the transmitted signal as Streptococcus, you have a really clear aggregation and an increase of the aggregation index. If we do the specific effect, in this case, you are cross reaction, so you have the transmitted signal as the Streptococcus, or the detection system as E. coli. In this case, you have no aggregation, and if it's specific, you have aggregation. In all the time, you have no molecules. In all these experiments, you have no molecules. Another model is blood or fibrinogen coagulation. So you have various blood coagulation tests using digital recorded blood molecules such as heparin, iridine, direct thrombin inhibitors, DTE, or homeopathic remedies like Nuxomica and heparinum 30CH. And initially, it was possible to see the clotting of the molecules directly on a tube, but of course it was not sufficient, so they developed a specific method to evaluate the coagulation, and with spectrophotometry and expressed on optic density. And the technique was automated to eliminate potential human impact. In this case, we have some results with iridine, so it's always digitalized iridine on plasma clotting time, and we see that it's clear that with the digital iridine, in comparison with water, you have an increase of the plasma clotting time. And we have, in this experiment, 34 experiments globally, 34.1% of increase. Another model is direct thrombin inhibitors, and it's one example of curve. So here you have the DT 1 micromole, the DT digital, and the control. And it's the global analysis, it's control, nothing. Digital is direct thrombin inhibitors, you have really good effect. And of course, a stronger effect with the original molecules. But it's really fantastic to obtain such results. And the last model is the fifth biological system, is a skin test. So it's a very classical. It's to induce effects of different vasodilatators such as histamine, serotonin, acetylcholine on the skin reaction. But in this case, it's not the original molecule, but it's digital molecule. And when we observe on the skin, here you have that acetylcholine minus 12 molar vortex, so it's agitated in saline. You have no good effect. Vortex in glucose, no effect. In water, you have a very strong effect. If you do the same, but not vortexed, but just mixed, so it's diluted, you have no effect. And if you put the atropine with this one, you have degrees of the reaction, so it's, of course, specific of the its inhibition, and we can dilute it also in water. And here it's the 7. It is the effect of acetylcholine signal. So it's the digital signal, and it's the same with reaction with when you put the inhibitors. So Jack Benveniste at the end have emit one hypothesis. So the current theory is structural matching, so it's clear. So you need ligand, you have a receptor, and you have cell function. For Jack Benveniste, and he is not alone to say that now, that the electromagnetic signal, so you have the molecule, if you can generate the signal of the molecule, you can have a clear effect on the cell. And this generation of electromagnetic signal can be produced in homeopathy preparation or with some medical device. So, of course, this discovery was made by Jacques Benveniste during the first, and they decided to build a company, a French biotech, just dedicated to the digital biology. So they create DigiBio, and they obtained finance from this business angel, and they made a lot of development technology. They have a portfolio and licensing also. So, as you know, and this photo, this is the death of Jacques Benveniste. So after that, the lab that didn't work a lot, and another team worked on this message is Luc Montagnier. And the Luc Montagnier is focused on DNA detection. So they build NADECTIS, and with DigiBio as supporter. So the detection of electromagnetic signal was initiated in 2005, and they conducted experimental based on the original device of Jacques Benveniste. So they make a detection of electromagnetic signal, a very low frequency wave, in certain dilution of filtrate from culture coming from microorganisms and from plasma of patients infected with the same agents. So this electromagnetic signal was produced by water nanostructure. And the DNA sequence itself could be reconstituted from the AMS in a specific gene, sorry. So here you have the detection of signal at different dilutions. So you have no signal for low dilution, and you have signal for dilution from -8 to -20, and not before, and not after. So here it's the mycoplasma pyramid, so it's the noise. So you can make analysis with Fourier, and in comparison with this unfiltered suspension or negative low dilution, you have no signal detected. And for positive, -7, you have a positive effect of a signal. So you can detect the presence of pathogen in the plasma, even the pathogen agent is not present. It's just the signal present in this plasma. And it's the same for disease of patients with Alzheimer's disease. If you test negative, you have no signal, and the dilution can be detected if you make a dilution and it's positive, -8. So it's a process can be used to detect the presence of the bacterial, of the infection agent without presence of the infection agent. And as described by Jacques Benveniste, this structure, nanostructure, are resistant to all these components, so it's not a physical structure, sensitive to heat, freezing, magnetic field, and the size is totally -20 nanomolar, so it's nanometer, so it's a virus in bacteria, but it's not possible to find this original agent when you make this kind of filtration. And these structures are totally stable at least 20 hours. And you have no linear correlation with the number of microorganisms present before the filtration. So the most important thing is you have no presence of the bacterial or microorganisms in the solution, but you have the effect of the pre-detection of this agent, even if you have no agent. So my interesting is to say to you, the work of Jacques Benveniste was reproduced and developed by other companies in the world. So it's not homeopathy, but it's perfectly based on this biology, digital biology. So you have a company in US, Emulate now, it's exactly the same, but with a specific approach. And they made really good studies and published them in a good paper. So here you have, you have sometimes when you don't want to use the same terminology, you have here the ultra-low radio frequency energy. So it's a new terminology, and it can say, okay, we are the first to discover this, but the fact is it's not the first. It's based on Jacques Benveniste, and they made a really effective device, medical device, to deliver this signal, this oscillating magnetic field, to a biological system. And the squid, it's a really good way to reproduce the effect. They published different papers on in vitro studies, so non-thermal radio frequency, so it's no molecules inside of stimulation of tubulin, So you have a clear effect of this tubulin on this model. You have also more recently, Michel spoke about the effect of epigenetism, and if it's the knockdown of gene with the specific emission, so it's a really specific of the gene, and also recently studies on the effect of this technology with the nativist voyageur on patients with recurrent glioblastoma. So it's a very, very strong and very difficult disease cancer to solve, and it's a promising result obtained with this technique. And the last company, but it's totally different. It's a Russian company initially. It's pharmaceuticals, and the technology is relatively simple. It's you register the remedy on the CD-ROM, and you put the glass on the CD-ROM, and you have the biological effect. So it's relatively simple, you know. You have a bank of signal, digital molecules. You charge the molecules, and you drink. So you can say, okay, it's strange, but it's work. And it's the effect of ponderal herbicide. I see digital herbicide and control. And the same in recently. So you have the digital CD with the information of herbicide, and they put on this water, and they observe a positive effect with this kind of message. So to finish my talk, just a question, Professor Benveniste, why is it so difficult for you to be accepted by the system? And because about what I just showed, they say, understand, I do not, therefore it is not. So I think now we can just say, hi guy, the earth is not flat. I'm not still alone to say the earth is round. And the pharmacy 2.0 seems becoming reality. And Jacques Benveniste think about that a long time ago, and we have some teams around the world making research on this fantastic field of research. Thank you for your attention.